Hey, what's going on? It's Austin Gray, host of the Owner Operator Podcast. Welcome back to the show. We've got Alex Forbes joining us. Alex is an entrepreneur who makes cabinets. He has built a cabinet business simply from starting in his garage, building cutting boards. Now he runs a couple $1 million a year cabinetry business, sells to builders, sells to custom homes. Really cool story. So I hope you guys stick around. Alex is a great guy, and I know that you will learn something from this episode. So stick around, listen to the whole episode. If you like the show here, please make sure to leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. 5-star review for podcasts is super important. No different than building a small business. You should ask for 5-star reviews. Ask your customers for 5-star reviews. It's very important. So would you take 30 seconds and just leave us one if you are enjoying the show? And then if you're watching on YouTube, I feel like I'm like a YouTuber now. It's like, could you like, comment, and subscribe? But really, could you like and subscribe to the channel? Because it does help us out, get the reach out. Look, I'm on a mission to help people start small businesses. I got a call from a friend yesterday, and he was withering away in the corporate world. I can relate because like 8 years ago, I was doing the same thing. I was depressed. I had no motivation. I was falling asleep in the afternoon. You guys can hear it in my voice. It's 7:23 a.m. I've been up since like 4:30 this morning, rocking and rolling, cranking. Like I wake up every single morning with tons of energy because I'm doing something meaningful, in my opinion. Like I'm building something from scratch with Bear Claw Land Services. It gives me so much energy and effort. And then I love doing the podcast. I love doing owner ops. They're like my personal mission has been clarified. I'm here to help people start small businesses. It comes very natural to me. And this is what I'm sharing with the world. So this is why I do the podcast. We also have Owner Ops, which is, for those of you who don't know, it is an online playbook, essentially, where we have been documenting where we started at zero with Bear Claw. Now we'll hit 7 figures this year. We've been documenting the whole process. We are doing that, very simply put, so that other people who want to start their own small business, like you, if you're listening to this, can follow the exact playbook. I felt like there was not a playbook out there for small service-based businesses. It doesn't matter if you're trying to start a power washing business, tree service business, land clearing business, excavation business, plumbing business, electrical. It's all the same in the early days. You need to owner operate to stack cash. Very simply put, you need to go start the business. You need to be doing the sales. You need to be doing the fulfillment, and you need to be doing customer support. You need to be doing billing, invoicing, estimating, all that stuff, simply so that you can build up your business bank account and then reinvest in future people, employees for the business, equipment for the business. That's why I'm such a proponent of the owner-operator mindset. You can start a business right now, today. Go learn how to do a skill on YouTube. Power washing is a great one. My friend called me yesterday. I had started a power washing site, coloradopowerwash.com, back in February. Hired my friends Bodie and Andy to do their magic on the SEO side. And then he wanted a business. He wanted to start something. So I sold it to him. He is now taking that business, and I'm excited because the guy is a really, really, really good person, and he's good at sales. So there's no doubt in my mind. He met with a Sherwin-Williams lead yesterday that we got through the website, and now he owns that 100%. He's off to the races, and he's part of the owner ops community, and he is going to follow the playbook that we have outlined to go build a multi-million-dollar business. Okay, owner ops is designed to get you for your first 500K, but we won't be stopping there. Trust me. I'm building relationships right now. Once I got to the 500K mark, I said, okay, what do I need to do to go level up here? I need to get in touch with the right people. I hired a business coach. His name is Les O'Hara. He runs the Contractor Huddle. He also runs a $4 million a year masonry business. He is coaching me how to build a business, smash through that like 650, 500, 650, 750K mark, get to the 7-figure mark, and figure out how to juice this thing up. I'm excited. If you can't hear me, I've got so much energy. We're having so much fun. I'm about to head out to the field with the field crew here at Bear Claw. We're about to crank out a tree job. I'm excited. Run up and down a mountain, cut down some trees, haul them off. Let's go, baby. I'm excited. Man, Man, this is the longest intro I've done, but I hope if you guys are listening, if you can't tell, I'm passionate about this. If you want to start your small business, go check out OwnerOps, ownerops.com. Okay. I'm not trying to sell you some snake oil stuff. This literally is what we have documented from the very beginning. You're going to get behind the scenes of exactly how we've done it. You're going to see what I was doing in the beginning to generate cash flow. You're going to see who we hired first. You're going to see how we do payroll, how we do estimating, how we do invoicing, how we do how we implement sales. Like sales is a big thing in small business, right? If you get an inbound lead, you need to be calling that person like right now. If you're not getting the response from the customer, wow, that was fast, then you're doing something wrong. Okay. I'm going to stop. I'm almost 6 minutes into this intro. I hope you guys are well. Thank you guys for listening so much. I hope you can feel my energy this morning because I got some and I'm giving it to you guys right now. So I'm encouraging you right now, if you're listening to this on a Friday or Saturday or whenever this is dropping, go start a business this weekend if that's what you want to do. If you don't, the corporate world is fine. Like if that's you, by all means, stay in your corporate job. I'm working twice as much. I have worked twice as much as I have, maybe 3 or 4 times as much. I don't know. Than when I was working in the corporate world. So like, is it going to be easy? No. Is it satisfying? Absolutely. I'm going to stop there. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Real quick, wanted to share with you 2 agency partners who have helped me grow Bear Claw Land Services. Striker Digital manages all of our SEO services, and they've got us to #1 on Google for specific search terms within our local service business. Cedar Digital Consulting manages all of our social media and YouTube, and they make it very simple for owner operators like myself. All I have to do is go take photos and videos in the field, upload those on my phone to a shared iCloud album very quickly, and they handle everything else from there. They edit and they publish. I don't have to worry about it. I can focus on growing my business. So if you're looking for SEO services, check out Striker Digital. That's Striker, STRYKER -digital.com. And for social media, check out Cedar Digital Consulting. That's CEDAR digitalconsulting.com. All right, welcome back to the Owner Operator Podcast. Haven't recorded in a couple of weeks, but I'm super excited about this. Alex Forbes with Lane 17 Cabinet Company. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yep.
Like, do you refer
Company.
to it as Lane?
Yes, sir.
But like whenever you're telling people, do you refer to it as just Lane 17 or do you say Lane 17 Cabinet Company?
I typically am just saying Lane 17. If I when I'm calling vendors, that's when they get the full Cabinet Company. But I'm trying to like create more like a brand around the Lane 17 thing. And then the Cabinet Company is just a little bit of a tagline to give context to what we're doing.
Yeah, I like what you have for a domain. Like I like domains. You have just Lane and then the number 17.com.
Yep. I think it's a little unique. It makes it a little easier to remember. Especially in the trade, it's like you get construction companies and stuff, and the domain of their emails are 20 characters long, and so I try to keep it short, and we can get into the story of that name if you want a little bit later.
Yeah, I definitely want to. So congratulations, by the way. I saw that you were featured in what's that newsletter called? Contrarian Think or Contrarian Thinking, Kenny Sanchez's.
Yep. Yeah, that was cool. I had one of her, someone on her team reach out through Twitter and gave them a quick background on what we do, a little bit of the background story, and did that interview with them. They must have gone back and thought it would be good content for the newsletter. And it went out yesterday officially on their website. And it was cool to see that. And it was also a little weird because I was reading my own story back on like a newsletter that I had been following for a couple of years now. And it was kind of like this weird, it was a cool validation of like my journey and what we have done. But it was a great opportunity, and get some eyeballs, get some exposure, provide a little insight into the grind of trying to start a cabinet company out of a garage.
Well, I sure enjoyed reading it, and this may seem a little bit repetitive for you, depending on when you did that last interview, but I'd love for you to tell our listeners just that story, just for how you started. I mean, you are literally like picture perfect person to be on the Owner Operator podcast.
Yeah.
I wanted to showcase people who have started from the ground up because it's challenging. And I read on the news that you started 8 years ago. Is that right?
Yep, 8 years ago.
And you were a real estate broker, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So take us back to the beginning and tell us about making the plunge.
So what, they laid it out really well in that newsletter, and I'll kind of follow that storyline. But so, little bit of background. I guess this would be a logical time to give the background on the name. So, growing up, my dad's side of the family has had cabins in Maine, on a lake in Maine, about an hour and a half or so north of Portland, since the 1960s. It's like a generational thing. They call them camps up there. And I went up there and still go up there every summer since I was pretty much born, 1, 2 years old. And I ended up, my uncles had some wood shops up there. And then there's a summer camp I ended up going to on that same lake, maybe from 10 to 14 years old. That was the first time I had ever been exposed to shop class, wood shop. Because by the time I got to high school, all that funding had been cut. No schools had shop class anymore. And didn't really grow up with anybody in the trades in my family, although I come from a family of small business owners. My grandpa on my dad's side started Forbes Brick, which was brick and tile distribution, from the 60s, 70s. And ultimately, the company kind of dissolved by 2010 area. So anyway, exposed to shop class up in Maine my whole life, always kind of a hobby. That's where I learned to work with my hands and the joy I got from doing that. Fast forward through school, went to Ohio State, graduated with a finance degree. From being exposed to small business owners growing up, going through a business, program in school, OSU being such a huge school is really pushing the corporate route once you get out. And so, which I didn't really want to do. And I always gravitated towards sales. So got a job at JLL as a commercial real estate broker. It was a suit and tie gig. I was 22 years old, baby face, 100 calls a week for a year. Nobody wanted to hire me to either try to lease or sell, what ultimately is hundreds of thousands of dollars in like a rent or a lease. It just like, you got to cut your teeth in that industry. You got to be doing it, somehow have to survive for 3 to 5 years with pretty much eating scraps, and like I said, I love sales. I love talking to people. I felt that I was in the wrong version of sales, selling the wrong thing, connecting with people for the wrong reasons. Got to the point where, I had a great upbringing and like never, my father died when I was 9 years old. So like I've experienced some adversity, but getting into the real world is like a totally different thing, right? When you're fending for yourself and you got to pay the bills and then you're trying to do that with something that you hate doing. It took about 6 months for me to realize that role was not for me. So muscled through to about the year mark, and I kept going back. It's like I got to the extreme of how miserable I was at that job. I wanted to flip to the other extreme of what can I do that it's something I'm passionate about, that I just enjoy doing, that really doesn't feel like work to me. And I kept going back to when I was building stuff in wood shop and just working with my hands, tinkering. I never really made anything substantial, but it was always a fun hobby. And over the summers between college, I would work out in the garage with circular saw and drills and, make tables out of pallets and just whatever material I could get. And those days, 16-hour days would fly by. Like I'd look outside and it would just be dark and I had no idea where the time went. So I connected the dots on what I enjoyed doing. And I'm like, we talked before this, I'm also just somebody who dives in head first. I thought I didn't really think about a proper business plan. I didn't write one out, although I feel like I have a good business mind. So I knew that I could solve any problem. I just didn't know what problems I was going to encounter quite yet. Spent the last month of that job as a broker just really researching what tools and machines I needed to jam into my mom's one-car garage, which was, I was living at home at the time. This was still only about a year or two outside of or after school. And got table saws, drill presses. I had a lathe, all this stuff. I had a great, I could send you some photos of that first shop, but it's like, there was a 2-foot aisle that you could walk in there And I got so trigger happy on the tools that once I went to go make like an actual dining table for somebody, I'm like, this does not work in the shop. There's no way that can happen. So I started super small with cutting boards, cheese boards, like, I launched the business in like August. By the time I got the tools and machines, it was about October. Perfect time for holiday type gifts, right? So I did like $5,000 in cutting board sales the first 3 or 4 months to get through Christmas. And I worked my ass off to do it. And there was little to show at the end, but it's like I just was buying material and I was just kind of working for free. And luckily I was living at home, so expenses weren't crazy for me. 6 months of that, I decided to, again, another leap of faith, pulled a trigger on leasing a 5,000 square foot, proper warehouse type shop in downtown Cleveland. So I needed to go from, I had only ever done like 5,000 in sales to I had to do about 10 grand a month, or else I would run out of cash and I couldn't be in that space. And so, with no real strategy of how to get there other than to just get exposure, be active on social media, connect with people, and hope that the business came in. I also shared some of that shop space with another guy who was kind of getting into it. He leased a little bit. As things were slowly rolling out, I started leasing time or renting time on the machines that I had, and anything to just get by and get to the next month. And so that's like I really went through that first year. I probably learned more in that first year than I had in the 4 years of college or high school or most of life, because it was just like a real wake up moment. I got to do this, or you know I'm on the streets, or I got to go get another job, which I'm really motivated. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably are like this, where they're motivated by fear of what I call ultimate failure, right? So failure, I love failing. I love trying something and it breaks or it doesn't. I love that. But ultimate failure is you have to, like, in a major way, revert back to something maybe you didn't want to do. Now, maybe you have some experiences like that you can talk about before you started Bear Claw.
Just laughing over here because, like, in the background on mute, because it's like we're all the same. Like,
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the Twitter community of small business owners. Like I said at the beginning of this, I wanted to showcase people like yourself, but all of these experiences are so similar. And my wife talk about it all the time. It's like I will make like 6 to 12 month promises, like throughout this journey since starting. It's like, hey, in 12 months I will be here. If I'm not here, I will go back and get my corporate job, which is like my ultimate failure, to have to go back and work for some big corporation and just a monotonous role. And so I was laughing because, like, that has been my motivating factor the whole time. I love failing too, to your point.
Yeah.
You have to try new things and throw them against the wall and see what sticks. Those little mini failures are key along the way because you learn and you get better. But ultimately, that, like, revert back to what you were doing before is what drives me. It sounds like it drives you too.
Yeah. And it really is it's funny, the dynamic of, it's almost like a paradox where, the entrepreneurial mind, especially when you're starting something from nothing, right? So I think people who buy a business, that is still a super challenging route to go. You got to flush out all the stuff that wasn't working in that business and totally restructure. And I've never done that. So I would imagine it's a totally different mindset. And but you're walking into something that does have some sort of foundation, where when you have to, literally brick by brick, build the foundation of something that, and listen, it's not like cabinets have never, there's thousands of cabinetry companies that manufacture cabinets. There's a lot of land clearing services throughout the United States. It's not like we're not reinventing the wheel here, but you are inventing the wheel for you and your team, and really establishing the culture and the systems and all that stuff. And if you have never done that before, then you're very much throwing stuff at the wall every day. Throw 10 things at the wall, 9 of them don't stick, and that's just how it goes for years. And so we're big on continuous improvement, and we're big on like a lean manufacturing principles, which was really invented by Toyota. It's been refined a lot. People have different versions of it. If you're cool with it, I'll keep rolling through the story, and we'll get to like how we figured out this continuous improvement mindset. But so going back to when we're in this 5,000 square foot shop, I have a guy renting some space, but he really was operating independently. I quickly realized the cutting board thing alone was not going to work. And also, to speak on that, all my friends and family who bought stuff from me and supported me, 100% were chattering in the background, laughing at me, thinking like, what, you just went to college, you got a degree. Everybody else, 50, 60, $80,000 starting salaries out of school. And here I am, doing cutting boards. Like everybody, it was a weird thing. It's like no one really took me seriously, but people also wanted to support me. So I'm grateful for that. And so I get into furniture because that alone wasn't going to cut it. Furniture started as just residential custom furniture. So dining tables, we did wood countertops for people. Eventually we connected with, ironically, through the cutting board thing, some restaurants who wanted, maybe 30 or 40 like cheese boards for appetizers and things like that. I ended up buying a laser engraver so I could engrave their logo and do some branding type stuff for people. Again, to continue to differentiate from what people could just buy online or in a store. I did that for a while. That commercial or restaurant exposure turned into doing a lot of commercial custom furniture packages. That might be bar tops for a bar, 30 restaurant tables, some, the biggest table we ever made was a 7-foot by 20-foot conference table in like $100,000 commercial furniture package. And by my standards, unless you're going to be like this kind of almost more of considered an artist with furniture, and people all around the world will pay thousands of dollars for just, your name on a piece, which is very difficult to get to. And it really is like I would consider those type of woodworkers as artists as much as a painter would be. And so we kind of got to what I thought was the pinnacle of furniture, custom furniture making, with 6-figure commercial packages and about as far as you'd want to take it for in a business context. And it was always a complete nightmare to try to get highly variable things through the shop, finding skilled guys who cared enough about the small details to get this stuff made. And there was no real way to create an operation or a production around it because everything that came through the door was different. Frankly, that's entirely why people called us, because they couldn't just go to Restoration Hardware or, Our House or any of these other big companies to get what they wanted. They would design something that had never been made, and we would have to figure out how to make it. And we made some incredible stuff, but it was, it came with so much waste and inefficiencies. And I had this aha moment one day where I was quoting a dining table for a residential, like a homeowner client. And I think, this was prior to COVID and all the price increases and stuff. So I think it was only like $3,000 for a 8-foot solid white oak or walnut, really nice dining table. And she was just giving me grief on it, like she was dogging me on the price and I'm like, this has never been made before. We can't just match what Wayfair. So, it's like, this takes time. There's guys making this, it's, better quality materials, the whole spiel. And as I was leaving, so we never got that job, but as I was leaving, I looked behind me in her kitchen that she had just done. And I'm like, she had to have spent 30 grand on those cabinets at least. And I'm like, I'm connected to the right. So my aha moment was I'm connected to the right interior designers, the right homeowners and people that are following us on Instagram or are calling us, are the people we want to talk to. I'm entirely selling them the wrong product. And it was like when I was a broker, I was selling the wrong thing to people. And we kind of had this light switch moment where we flipped over and started at least saying that we offered cabinetry. We still made furniture. Our website still said we made furniture for the first year that we made cabinetry. And the thing that really set it off and kind of solidified our move to dropping furniture and going to cabinets was ironically COVID. It was the weirdest, is the world gonna end moment for that first 30 days. And then it was like the floodgates came through, and everybody had started renovating and building and buying new houses because nobody could go on vacation. So they had the money to just put it back into their houses. And like nothing would say that we did furniture on our social media, but people would call and just ask, hey, do you guys do cabinets? Do you guys do kitchens? Do you do bathrooms? And we're like, oh, matter of fact, we do. And we just like everything, we cut our teeth on doing, not trying to come up with some perfect plan. A lot of the machines and tools we had enough of an overlap to just kind of get into it. And we made a million mistakes. Like we would be on site wrapping up little punch list items 2 months longer than we needed to. Probably didn't make much money on those first 5 or 6 jobs even. And we just kept, like you said, throwing stuff against the wall. This worked. We didn't manage expectations well in this context. The way we made this thing sucked. How do we make it better? How do we reiterate, refine, improve? And we've been doing that for 4 or 5 years now with cabinets. And we feel we just really got over the learning curve of how to manufacture this stuff efficiently. And now we're putting some resources into the office of how do we process orders and stuff, and do design and all those things more efficiently.
I want to get into like what your team looks like, but before that, I'm curious to hear. So, as the leader of this team, you made a decision to switch from furniture to cabinets.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you had an aha moment where you were in somebody's house and you saw what they had just spent, or you put 2 and 2 together, or you had a conversation with.
Mm-hmm.
How long did that aha moment linger inside of you or in your head before you made the decision, like, we are going full force, all in on cabinets, like strategy has completely changed, I'm 100% in on this? Or was it like, did that take time? Was it like, hey, let's throw this against the wall and like be open to it for a little bit? Can you take us through that?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, that aha moment was when we were doing furniture. The last quarter of the year was always insane because everybody wanted a table for Thanksgiving or Christmas, essentially. They wanted to wrap up by the end of the year. So if I remember correctly, it was probably sometime between November and end of December when that person shut me down on the table. And I'm like, they put so much money into these cabinets in their kitchen. And so I think after the new year, as we started getting new leads in for furniture, I would always ask, do you guys have a bathroom vanity? Do you have any? That was the easiest pivot for us. Vanities, they're small, relative to like a kitchen. They're small. Some people wanted furniture style vanities, so there was a little overlap there. So I would start with vanities and like built-ins for like living room built-ins. And eventually people would say, oh, because most time when you're calling for custom furniture, you're probably, not all the time, some people just want a table. But a lot of times people were like on the tail end of their remodel. And there was always an opportunity to do some small cabinet scope. So we started getting some smaller things, probably the first quarter of that next year, maybe 3 months of doing that. And we kind of just caught a break. We had a developer reach out. And in hindsight, this is like, it's kind of crazy this happened because I've learned that this never happens. We had a developer locally reach out. They were building like 100 units or maybe an 80 to 100 unit apartment complex in like a kind of up and coming neighborhood around Cleveland. And they wanted 100 white oak, like furniture style bathroom vanities. And typically I've learned, so those vanities at the time, I think were like $1,500 to $2,000 per vanity. I take that back. There's some small, it was like $1,000 to $1,500 per vanity. I've since learned that developers never spend more than $3 to $4 grand for the entire apartment unit worth of cabinetry because they typically are getting them overseas. They're imported, like they're just trying to cut costs. So to spend half of their cabinetry budget on one single vanity was crazy. We ended up getting the job. It was like $100,000 worth of bathroom vanities. Again, we had never made more than 1 or 2 at a time. Now we had to make 100. And we just put the pieces together. We figured we had to get, before we were kind of designing these things on the fly, we had to get proper engineering software to machine all the stuff on the CNC, to, locate all the drilling pilot holes for hinges and drawer slides and shelf pin holes. And like, we couldn't just slap plywood together and expect to make money. Or if something went wrong, it had the potential to put us out of business because we didn't have the cash, to cover major rework. So, that this was the first like big commitment to cabinetry. We had to do crazy volume relative to what we had ever done, but we committed to financing a $30,000 engineering software that we still use today, and it programs all of our equipment. And in hindsight, we had no business using that software, but my business partner Jason was the one that took the reins of that. He shares the same mindset as me, and was like, I don't really care what it takes. I'm going to figure this thing out. And he figured it out to just at least get through that order. That also gave us enough cash flow to start offering kitchens and maybe get some other tools. And so to answer your original question, it was probably about a 3-month period from when I think we should do this to we got that big apartment bathroom vanity job and said, this is so much volume for us. We feel confident to drop furniture altogether and just start advertising cabinetry. We have the software now. We would later figure out that we had to do a total wipe of like not all of our equipment, but probably 60% of our equipment in the shop that didn't make sense anymore. I got another get out of jail free card. Somebody locally bought 80 grand worth of equipment from me. And that never happens. Normally you got to go to auction. You maybe can piece it out in like used machine forums and stuff like that online. A guy locally just bought it all, and we got the proper equipment needed to actually manufacture cabinetry, and the rest is kind of history.
You've had a couple of these situations where you've said this just never happened.
Right.
I'll push back a little bit because I believe that the people like yourself who are out there taking action and just to solving the problems and doing it for the right reasons, I think good things come to those who work hard. And I just believe, like I personally believe in God. I believe He has a good plan for us, and I think we're rewarded for hard work. And so it's like your action, your willingness to like show up and solve these problems, you've had a couple of these things just fall right into place. And I can say on my end too, like we had similar stuff fall into place, and a lot of, I think you could easily say that never happens, but the reality is it did. And I think it's because you're showing up and doing the work every single day, actively solving the problems, moving on the fly, trying to make things better. And so hats off to you for just being in the right situation at the right time and taking action on it.
I would agree with that. I think it's like, I consider myself a humble person. So I think it's like when it's happening to you, it's like, this doesn't happen to anybody, that kind of feeling. But I also agree with, I'm big on believing that, you create your own momentum. Momentum is not just a thing that happens. And that kind of goes hand in hand with what people perceive as luck. I think that if you put in the hours and you have the repetitions and you talk about being at the right place at the right time, well, you don't really have to try to time anything if you're just always in that place, right? So whenever we're in problem solving mode, even if I'm selling machines, every day I am figuring out how to unload this equipment to get to our goal of getting the right stuff. Or if I'm trying to get into doing cabinetry, every opportunity I get, whether I'm, friends and family events, at a bar, at a restaurant, talking to somebody who called for a coffee table, I am always working in, hey, this is what we're doing now. Do you have any need for this? Like I did the broker thing. I get, 100 calls a week for 12 straight months and thousands of no's. I'm not afraid of rejection, but I also learned through all that. I'm actually very grateful for that commercial broker experience because rejection really doesn't bother me at all. But I also learned that that's where I learned that you do have to put in the reps. And even if you do, it's still not guaranteed. So you can never stop. You got to just keep it going. And so I agree. I think that the momentum, the luck, those once in a lifetime, opportunities, they actually come multiple times in a lifetime because you're constantly trying to make things happen.
No doubt about it. So after you make the change in strategy, what did you do from a marketing perspective? Like, did you go completely rework what your website is portraying? Did you change things that you're portraying on social media? Talk me through thought
Yeah.
process.
So there was probably a year of a like transitional business year that we had. So like I said, there was our old website was up for probably the remainder of that year that we ultimately switched. The next year I revamped the website. At this point, that the website's so outdated. There's so many projects we've done that aren't on there, and that's a product of just I'm still wearing a lot of hats, and managing the website was one of them. So it slipped through the cracks. But we've been fortunate, and this is also kind of going to like, what you're selling, I think does matter. I think a lot of seasoned sales guys will probably say it doesn't matter what you're selling. It's just like they can get a deal done. But when I was doing the commercial real estate stuff, like nobody really wanted, I was viewed as a commodity. Nobody wanted my services as a broker to, lease or sell your building until they did need it, right? You don't need an attorney until you need an attorney. And so I was very much viewed as a commodity. With the cabinetry thing, we were offering, to the level of quality and the options that we are able to accommodate. We differentiate ourselves with the customizability and the fit and finish. And there's no selling that. It pretty much, as long as the budget works on the project, people want what we have. Most people are willing to wait. I mean, our lead times no less than 12 weeks. At the moment, we're crazy busy and it's 16 weeks. We're trying to fix that, but like people are willing to wait for this stuff. So the product of Cabinetry made it so easy on Instagram to sell it, because we would just post the quality. And I'm fortunate that Jason, my partner, was in another life. He was a more or less a professional photographer, and so he does all of our photos. And because he's also engineering this stuff, he knows exactly what super fine details to highlight. Like if you go to Home Depot, you just get some renderings, or you just see a flat shot of cabinetry. Like you don't see the back end of the guys making it in the shop. You don't see what's inside the drawers. How does this cabinet function? Like all that behind the scenes stuff, in my opinion, it adds a lot of authenticity to what we're doing, and that this isn't just some factory cranking out 1,000 cabinets a day, and connecting the story to even the story I've told you with our come up, with my background going to Maine and working with my hands. And that's what marketing is. You got to tell the story. And so I've probably paid $500 over 8 years in like paid advertising, and it's all social media, word of mouth. I would much rather. So I started going on offense, to answer your question. I DM people on Instagram religiously, or I used to in those early years of doing this. And I would rather spend my time researching. I might, if you were an interior designer or a builder, I might follow you for 6 months observing what you're doing. And I might be doing that for 100 people. And when I see one opportunity where maybe you post something and it's anything relevant to what we do, or I identify that I think we could add more value to you, I kind of like sink my teeth in. I reach out. I try to get a call, get a meeting. My sales mindset is I put myself in your shoes. I'll never call you telling you how great we are. Hey, I heard that you posted a photo of your last project. It looked like the color of the white oak was like a little off or something like that, or we could create way more consistency, or we could do this. Or I always tell people I'm happy to value engineer, and let's get you what you want on the outside, but there's a lot of things we can do behind the cabinet doors that save on cost. And this is very much a collaboration. And so people are pretty receptive to that, because cabinetry is a big line item on a lot of remodels and new constructions, and we want to get it right. And we want the clients to feel like they got what they were expecting and what they paid for. And it's all about creating value. That's really what sales is. Solve a problem for somebody, add value to them. It's never about you.
You're absolutely right. So you obviously manage the sales or lead
Yeah.
the sales in your company. Can you tell
Yep.
us
I
about
still
the
do.
rest of your team and who handles what responsibilities and roles within the company?
Yeah. So today, um, 4 years ago, it was my business partner and I, maybe two other employees, one or two other employees. It was really hard to keep up. We're also a little unique in the sense where we make and finish and assemble everything in house. So a lot of other shops, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's just a different it's a way of production. A lot of other shops outsource cabinet doors. They may outsource the drawer boxes. They might outsource finishing sometimes, just kind of piece it together. We internalize all of that stuff. We make our own doors, drawers. We do all of our own finishing. It's a lot about control of the process, quality control. We can do a lot of other things that most other companies aren't doing because of that. So it takes a little bit more effort in the shop and in the office to execute that. So the dynamic is I'm still doing all sales and estimating and pricing. I'm hoping to delegate that role sometime in the next year and focus more on building long-term relationships with what we call trade partners, designers, and builders. My business partner Jason does all of our engineering, so that produces the shop drawings, that programs the equipment. It gives the guys in the shop the reports and cut lists to make the cabinets. We are training our old project manager to now become an engineer, like a hybrid engineer project manager role. So he'll do the shop drawings and he'll kind of guide clients through the process. We're hiring a second engineer. Jason will focus on operations and managing the guys in the shop, schedule, stuff like that. And then we have 5 guys in the shop operating our equipment, making cabinets, and getting them out the door. So there's 9 of us now. We might be bringing on a designer in house, which would make it 10, which would kind of be a milestone because we've never had like double digit, personnel within Lane 17. So that'll be kind of cool. We're going to offer health insurance for the first time this summer. Like there's a lot of cool things happening that we're able to give back to our employees and like make it a hopefully a long-term home for people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's like every single growth stage. Well, I had John Wilson on the podcast, and he called it like every stage brings a gut punch
Yeah.
because you got to make a decision, like whether you're building the team and bringing on more people or investing in machinery, like in your business. I'm sure it's very asset heavy as far as the specific
Yep.
type of machinery you need. But I don't know about you. Each time I've had to make those decisions for like, are we going to add a new team member, going to add a new piece of equipment? It's a big gut punch.
Yeah. So how do you I'd be curious to know because we're going through a similar phase, and I call them, it's the same concept as a gut punch. I call them breaking through glass ceilings because they're very much a glass ceiling that can be broken through. But like if you were to like consider what it would take to break through a physical glass ceiling, you're going to be left with a bunch of cuts and scrapes and wounds, and like it would hurt. It hurts to do that. And so it's the same thing. We have to, I'm never going to feel comfortable hiring another person. I'm never going to feel comfortable rolling out benefits for a whole company. We're facing a situation now where we are going to need to move shops within the next 12 months, and I want to buy a building, and it's going to double our rent back to the business. And it's all these things, and there's no one to say that yes, it's going to work out perfectly or not. You just have to commit. I mean, strategize, make sure it's a calculated risk, but at some point you just have to pull the trigger and do it. So I'd be curious to know, because we have a ton of equipment in our shop. I know that you are asset heavy with you got a Mini X, you got a skid steer. I know you got a chipper and all that stuff. Like, what is your mindset into onboarding equipment, balancing that out with people? Take me through your process when you're like, hey, we got to do this, or we got to scale back, or something like that.
Well, I haven't had to scale back yet, thankfully, and I'll knock on wood there. But each time, even from the beginning, whenever it was just me renting a skid steer, after I was renting for multiple months in a row, going into that second busy season, I had a decision to make. And I knew that we were going to put a skid steer to work. So I went and purchased the skid steer and I financed it. In the beginning, it's like, man, okay, so this is a big, I love the way you phrase it, breaking through a glass ceiling, because I think from a positive outlook, like you're going to break through and you're going to have glass to clean up, and you know that. And then once you get it cleaned up,
It's
like
the new floor.
Yeah, it's a new floor, right? So I love that. And yeah, the first one was $2,000 a month skid steer. That was a lot for me in the beginning. I knew down, I'm like, I believe in myself enough that I can go pay for this skid steer per month, no matter what, like every month from here on out. And then we did that, and I like went and did the sales and marketing to go get jobs enough to pay for that skid steer, right? And then I started then I hired my first guy, and it was like, all right, I don't remember if it was 25 or 30 bucks an hour, whatever started in the beginning. It's like, man, that was going to be a lot for me. Cause I'm like, dang, that's like 30 bucks an hour less. I'm not going to be able to like pay towards my family's expenses or whatever, or, like reinvesting back in the business. Each time it's tough. But at the end of the day, I just come to this conclusion of, do I believe in our team? And in the days, it was just, do I believe in myself enough to go sell enough work to be able to pay for that monthly expense? And then we just kept in that. And the way I like to view it is, I do it, and then we prove to ourselves that it can be done. And then whenever we need the next piece, it's another glass ceiling that we have to break through. And I think about it for a while. And in the early days, I thought about it for a lot longer, and it was a lot harder to do. Now, like I just hired a guy basically at the salary. He's going to be the highest paid person on our team to do sales and estimating and project management. And I thought about that one for like a day. And then I was like, no, we can do it. Like, yes, come on board. I'll allocate this amount to you. Here's salary, here's benefit package, and let's rock and roll. And now that's where I'm allocating like all of my time. Like we're spending like 3-4 hours a day total on the phone back and forth to work through estimating. But to your point, it somewhat does feel like you're taking a step back in the beginning, because you have pioneered this process. You know how to do it very well. And then you ask me to bring either another team member or another piece of equipment on, and then you've got to take a step back. And so I think that's the hardest thing for me, because I like to move 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I have to keep reminding myself, like, take a deep breath, Austin, like, just slow down and like be in it for the long haul. And the time that you invest now is going to pay dividends in the future, because if I can delegate sales and estimating to someone who is as good or better than me at that, now I can go focus my time as the owner to like figure out the next glass ceiling to break through. And that's just how I viewed it this whole time. And it's fun that way. To your point, it's not boring. There's a new challenge every single day. And that's what keeps my brain alive.
Yeah. So I would, it is funny. I mean, even how different our businesses are, it's the same parallel. And, it took me a while. I'm very much like you, like 1,000,000 miles a minute. If you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. Like, I learned a ton by having to force myself to not have that mindset for everything. And it took a while, because I was 23, 24 when I started the business. So I kind of just like was also learning about life in general. But I've learned like the only way to scale a business is through people. And the only way to scale people is through automation. And so automation, and this what brought us to our lean manufacturing principles kind of journey that we've gone through. About 3 years ago, we first learned about it. There's a company called FastCap who they make a lot of tools for cabinet makers, woodworkers, like kind of in my industry. They make a lot of tools. They make tape measures, like stuff like that. The owner, Paul Akers, has been preaching his version of lean, which he calls, really, it's centered around making 2-second improvements, very small daily incremental improvements forever. And he has a book called 2-Second Lean. Jason and I read it. We learned it. We read it again. He has a ton of videos on YouTube. We really try to make this like our new religion, and we're committed to making that Lane 17's culture. And so for about a year, Jason and I just learned about what that even meant in our context. What does it mean to make 2-second improvements? There's 8 deadly wastes. It's if I can remember off the top of my head, it's overproduction, overprocessing, transportation, wasted motion. Defects is a big one in our industry, because if we're sending parts out that are defective, we got to get them back. Rework is a nightmare if you don't have it under wraps. And a big one that is probably my favorite is unused employee potential or unused employee genius. And so my whole concept, that's like the one I latch onto the most. And my whole concept is we obviously need people to operate, right? And to your point, I'm also learning that we have to delegate. I have to delegate project management, ultimately estimating, and I have to be fine with that person probably doing 70 to 80% of the volume that I could do. But I can't expect them to do what I could do, because if they could do that, they'd probably just have their own business. Like, there's a reason why, however, much like you, I'm sure, like, you get spread out really thin once you're approaching that glass ceiling. You're doing a lot of things, or you're doing more of them. And so that person that can take that off your plate, well, they have the luxury of just they can focus on less things. They don't need to worry about, accounts payable and payroll and getting new business to come in the door. They just have to worry about estimating it. Or the guys in the skid steers just have to worry about clearing an area. Like, they don't have the pressures. And so once you get close to a glass ceiling, it's becomes so obvious when another person has to get plugged in. So going back to my whole philosophy is, like, I want to have less people that are critically thinking, and they're problem solvers, or we can develop them to become higher impact problem solvers. And I have no problem spending money on equipment, or the other version of automation would be through like standards and SOPs and systems. So something as basic, and this is like the epitome of a 2-second improvement mindset. If you were to really audit your weekly emails, or like whatever you're doing on your computer, you probably type the same things a million times, or you probably open the same windows 40 times a week. And so, like, I have a Stream Deck, which is really used in like the streaming industry. I don't know if you use one for your podcasts. They get a Stream Deck, and I program it to open like, QuickBooks or Slack, or I just have to hit a button to open that thing. Or I have a lot of things that I'm typing the same of. So I use Text Expander, which is a little application you can get on your computer. And I make that, if I could have, when somebody, for example, this is a good example. When somebody inquires through the website, I have the same exact spiel like that I just give back to them. I explain our process. I explain what I need, what information. This is how I'm able to bid the project, so on and so forth. And it's probably like 1,000, 500 to 1,000 character email. And I can just preload that email in Text Expander and type 3 characters. That's my keyboard shortcut, and it populates the whole email. So there's a million things like that really amplify somebody's efforts. And going back to, I'd rather develop critical thinkers and problem solvers. And instead of hiring 3 guys to just sand cabinet doors all day, like I posted a couple days ago, I think you commented on it or liked it. There's a sanding robot that you load a door in front of it, and it's a robotic arm with a 5-inch orbital sander on it. It scans the dimensions of that part, and it sands it. There might be some little cleanup by hand after that, but that eliminates 80 to 90% of somebody's labor. And it's also like, nobody wants to sand doors all day. And it'd be like if you didn't have a skid steer, they're out there with a plow and shovels. Like, who's going to do that? And so you get equipment to amplify the efforts of your current people and future people. But the continuous improvement mindset is so you constantly, the business is a living organism. It's got to constantly evolve and get better and improve. And it's a tough thing to implement. You got to get people to really care more than the average person. But once people develop that, like, I call it like a lean lens, that your brain kind of gets rewired and you can't see things a different way.
Dude, I love that concept, like that you mentioned. Like, how can I invest in the right equipment that's going to supplement these people and essentially just like 100x their productivity?
Yeah.
So I think, like, and you've mentioned it already, our businesses are completely different, but they
Yeah.
have so many similarities.
Hmm.
I'm curious to know like how much equipment do you have?
So we
Like, what's the
have
value?
like we have like 500 or 600 grand of equipment on the shop floor in a 6,000 square foot shop. Like there is barely any room to move.
If you didn't have that $600,000 worth of equipment, how many people would you have to have?
We'd probably have to have like 8 to 10 guys. So basically double the amount of people in the shop. And so one of these companies that I followed, they're also big lean guys, and they're also a cabinet shop out in Utah. Trim Art is their company name. And Tyler, who owns it, he's always on the videos. A phrase that I really that makes a lot of sense, and it sums this up, is and I think it'd be similar for you too, to an extent, where you can either hire a person or you can hire a machine. Either way, if the business needs to expand, it the expense will the money will be spent. It doesn't matter. Now, it's a different type of risk and commitment, because let's say, at least for us, I don't know if it's the same for you, but typical, like, our equipment financing is pretty much like a lease with a $1 buyout. It's like a straight line 5-year term. So yes, if I buy $100,000 piece of equipment, I am committing to paying for that thing for 5 years. Unless, if I have to sell it, maybe I lose a little bit of money on the difference, but it is a commitment to get that. It's always a few grand to get it hooked up to power, dust collection, all that stuff. Where if you hire a person, if things go south, you could let that person go. I guess you have a little bit more flexibility, but especially on a small team, turnover is never good for morale. And we really try to be selective on who we get, and we're willing to pay, 25, $30 an hour starting to do that. And again, where I connected all this is last year, we did have a relatively new, but like lower skilled guy just sanding all day. And he showed up on time, and that wasn't an issue, but he was super slow. There were so many inconsistencies and just defects ultimately going into the paint booth, because he wasn't being effective. And we let him go, and I got a sander that was 50 grand that reduced our hand sanding efforts by 80%. So, and to give you a more extreme example of what we did this time last year, like May or June, and to show you the effectiveness of it, we had our shop floor was like, big thing with manufacturing is creating flow, right? So we had no flow in our shop. It was carts and people and parts, crisscrossing all over the place, and it made no sense. And we could never figure out why we couldn't get enough out of the door each month. And my business partner and I just like had a conversation, had a major reset. We relayed out the shop. We shut down for 2 weeks and spent 70 grand on electrical and rigging to redo the whole shop, the whole footprint changed completely. I got like 300 grand worth of equipment last year that we integrate into the process, and the same 5 people are producing 80 to 100% more throughput in that new layout. So we could never do more than like 50 or 60 grand a month last year. And now we do like 100 to 120 grand a month with the same 5 people in the shop. Now, granted, I have the payment on all that equipment, but it's typically about $2,000 per month per $100,000 in equipment you finance. And a person's 4 grand a month minimum. So it's always a balance. We had an equipment heavy year last year. This year, now we have all this capacity in the shop now. Now we're having a people year, and we got to get people to operate the equipment. And it's just like this back and forth over the years.
I love it. So similar.
Yeah.
Like last year, ours was equipment. Like I was pushing hard to get to this. I had this ideal equipment model as well.
Yep.
And I knew we needed to get there. I knew we could get there. So we got there, and then now this is a people year, and it's like a consistent bounce back and forth between machinery and equipment. But I am unbelievably excited to watch you grow. Where are you at top line revenue?
So last year we did just about 1.2. We should do 1.5 this year, but we had our target set for 2 million. And we'll see if we hit it or not. This is very much glass ceiling year for the office where we need to add a lot of capacity to get stuff, engineered to the shop, flush out designed with clients more quickly than we're doing now. So we're in a heavy people year, and it's a reason why that our lead times have climbed to like 4 months. And that would be the only reason why we wouldn't hit it. But like I have 10 or 12 bids that I'm trying to get to at any given time. And it's just like, it can't there's not enough time. And I want to do stuff like this, right? I want to jump on calls with people. I want to meet people, develop relationships with builders. And we do stuff all over the country. It's not just Cleveland. And so we're like getting to that point where someone's got to take my place as estimator. And to a point that you made earlier was that as you break through more of those ceilings, you do learn that, as you're approaching it, you feel, how could I ever take on this expense? Because the capacity that I'm trying to unlock, it sounds good on paper, but it isn't guaranteed, because you still have to go out and execute. But what is guaranteed is you're going to pay for that person or piece of equipment. But the more you do that, the more you realize it typically pans out, as long as you're working on the right things. And, you sound like you have a very similar mindset to me. So it's just, your back's against the wall, you're going to go out and you're going to do it. And there's no stopping you.
I love the fact that you use that term, your back's against the wall. There is nothing more motivating than backing yourself into a corner where you just have to fight hard to get out.
Yep. 100%. That was, for me, I sold $5,000 in cutting boards, and then I just signed a 3-year lease on a 5,000 square foot space. I put myself in a position where everybody else thinks you're kind of nuts, and why would, you're stupid for not planning this out and blah, blah, blah. But like, planning stifles execution. Like, you're not gonna, the quicker you can get out there and do the thing, you're going to get the feedback, again, what works and what doesn't, reiterate and keep doing the thing. And so that 5,000 square foot space was like, that was a back against the wall moment. From there, we moved to a 14,000 square foot building down the street. That's when we really started getting into cabinetry. The only reason we moved into that space that was that big is because we got crazy cheap rent. And then we started learning about lean and continuous improvement and flow. And we're like, we had 16 feet of space around every machine. We're like, there's all this wasted space that we're paying for. And we moved 3 years ago to a 7,500 square foot shop with all of the same equipment. And we actually got a lot more equipment since we moved in there. And we're doing, from when we were in that old 14,000 square foot shop, we're doing 3 times the volume out of 7,500 square feet with twice the amount of equipment. And now we're just getting to the point where, like, you can't get inside the front door when a bunch of cabinets are stacked up there ready to go out. But it's been more space, more equipment, more people is really, it shouldn't be the first answer. You should be looking at your flow. You should be looking at the process. My guess is, you have X amount of time allocated to rigging up your equipment, getting them on and off in trailers. And I guarantee that, if you haven't heard of 2 Second Lean, I would, if you care to read it, it's a short read. It's like 150 pages. I'd be curious what you think of it, because I bet there's 1,000 things you could do. What was that?
What's it called again?
2 Second Lean, LEAN. And I can send you the link.
I'm gonna read it. Yeah,
they have audio books
right
too.
Now.
It's short, but I bet you there's 1,000 things you could do to incrementally improve the rigging process on your trailers, and it would get your guys in and out of on site, in probably half the time or something like that. An easy example are, if my guys need a drill or a drill bit or a tool, so we have like 10 or 15 drills in the shop, right? And it's because I don't want to just have 1 or 2 drills that everyone's got to go to, like, check out of a tool room or something like that. We're going to put a router or the drill bits or whatever they're doing at every single spot that they use them throughout the workflow. Like a big lean thing that Paul Akers talks about is the answer should be where the question is asked. So if the question is, I need a tool or I need a drill for this thing, it should be right in front of your face. It shouldn't be 100 steps across the shop or back in the truck. Like, for you, maybe you need a small toolbox on every skid steer or whatever it is. I mean, there's a million options, but Read that book and let me know what you think of it, because it was pretty eye-opening, and it's a very approachable thing. They're very small little things that you can tweak to really add value to your overall operation.
I definitely will read it, and thank you for the recommendation. And so any listeners there, check out the book. Let us know in the comments below if you read it and if you do like it. Alex, this has been so much fun. I've got a couple crew members here for a project, and they're waiting on me to jump out there. And so we'll have to wrap this one up. It's been great meeting you in person, and I'll do a second episode because I think we could dive into so much more.
Yeah, man, it's been a ton of fun. I'll go crush it today, and let me know if you have any other questions about anything, but I'd love to do this again if there's a chance.
Oh, fantastic. We will definitely do it. Good luck this year, and we'll talk to you. I mean, we'll keep engaging online, but and now that we have each other's first, call me anytime on my cell phone. I love the fact that you know, that's the most fun thing about this podcast, is to get to meet people like yourself and just challenge each other to grow our businesses. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're going through similar challenges, and yeah, it's been really fun. So thanks for sharing your story. Where can people find you and your business online?
So I'm on Twitter, Alex Forbes with 2 underscores at the end, Lane 17 Cabinet Co. on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. So it'd be cool to connect with people that are doing something similar, and happy to answer any questions about what we're doing if anyone's interested.
All right. Well, listeners, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Owner Operator Podcast. Just like building a small business, 5-star reviews are super important for podcasts as well. So if you are enjoying these episodes, would you mind to take a quick 30 seconds and leave us a review on Spotify or Apple? If you are listening on YouTube, would you mind to just like and subscribe to the channel? But thanks again for listening. Don't forget, work hard, do your best, never settle for less, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.